What if I told you that most farmers are only using 30% of their land's potential? While those tomatoes ripen over the next 90 days, a lot of valuable real estate that could be used sits there idle. Today, we're taking a look at interplanting and how it can benefit your farm coming up on Modern Grower. Thanks for watching the video today. I'm Diego, D-I-E-G-O. I'm a podcaster, a YouTuber. I run the farm tools company, Modern Grower, and I'm here to help you run a more profitable farm business. Today, we're talking interplanting. What is it? Interplanting is defined as a way to utilize the space that you have on your farm by growing multiple crops on the same patch of dirt. And today, we're going to break down Curtis Stone's advanced interplanting technique that he used in his urban farm, and it transformed how profitable his farm could be. And if you embrace this advanced strategy, it can make your farm more profitable, all without adding land. First, let's make sure we know what interplanting is. Interplanting is growing multiple crops together in the same space during the same time. This is different from companion planting, which focuses on plants that benefit each other, like marigolds allegedly repelling pests from tomatoes. We're talking about utilizing the same space to grow two crops. We're maximizing the land that we have. And there's two main ways that Curtis interplanted. One is what's called mixed interplanting. Mixed interplanting is where you have different crops in the same bed with different dates to maturity. Think radishes planted in between kale. The radishes and kale can be planted at the same time. The radishes mature before the kale closes up the canopy, leaving room for the kale to grow. Two crops pulled out of the exact same bit of land. That's mixed interplanting. The second type is relay interplanting. This is where you plant a new crop into an already established crop before the established crop is harvested. This is one of the things that Curtis specialized. We'll dig into why he did that and what the benefits are.
With interplanting, and it's something that I didn't really explore in my first years of farming. I think mainly because I just kept getting land offers and I just kept saying yes, and so I just kept taking on more land.
You like the idea of interplanting? Why do it? There's a few benefits. Maximize space utilization. It's an easy way to, quote, get more land for free. You can increase your yield per square foot, better manage pests. You can get a continuous harvest out of a bed by stacking different crops in the same spot. And you can improve the soil health because roots occupy different spaces within the soil profile. At his urban farm in Kelowna, Curtis took his interplanting to a whole new level. This was his greenhouse system. In early March, he would seed cool weather greens, arugula, mustard greens, and pack out the greenhouse. Those would then start to grow and mature. He'd begin harvesting those. Then come mid-April, while he was still harvesting those greens, he would start to plant his baby tomato seedlings in between the rows of greens. This utilizes one bed, now two crops. This made things a little awkward because you're harvesting greens around baby tomato plants that you want to make sure you're not cutting down. But the advantage of this is you're getting two crops on that same bed, so it's like getting a whole nother bed for free. But it does add complexity, and this is where most farmers say, no way, not worth it.
It's a little awkward for about 3 weeks. It's a little awkward to walk around, but it works. You have to be careful interplanting these tomatoes into the beds and even the walkways in these greenhouses.
In early May, the spring greens have all been harvested and cropped out. The tomato plants have grown. They're tall. There's open space now at the base of the tomato plants. Instead of leaving that space bare soil, Curtis utilized it by planting another crop. He would plant 2 rows of basil along each side of the tomato plants, ensuring that he, again, had 2 crops in one bed. As the summer continues, he's harvesting basil, the tomatoes eventually ripen. So by the end of this whole cycle, he's gotten tomato, winter greens, and basil all out of the same bed. 3 crops, 1 piece of land. That's a key insight with interplanting. There's never a moment where a bed isn't producing something that's sellable. That's constant cash flow. Now, this isn't easy, and let's be real, this isn't your square foot gardening. Curtis developed the system over years of trial and error. It's complex, but let's look into it. Some of the nuances are timing, and timing is everything in a system like this. If you plant too early, you'll crowd out both crops. Too late, and you miss the window for both crops to grow in the same space. So you have to track your planting data very carefully and then analyze those results so you can adjust on future iterations. The second thing you really need to think about is space management. Working in a greenhouse with multiple crops at different stages can be crazy. You're going to need to be doing all sorts of vegetable twister to get your way through these aisles without stepping on anything. And it's kind of like Tetris, trying to fit it all in a system that works for you. The other thing you have to be careful of is watering. Different crops have different watering needs. If 2 crops are planted in the same bed, you want to assure yourself that both those crops need the same amount of water. You don't want a dry crop planted with something that requires more water. That's not going to work. And finally, harvest logistics. It's going to be tricky. Imagine harvesting greens while growing tomatoes are hanging above you. It's difficult. It's going to require some finesse and patience.
Going through this transitionary year where I quadrupled my operation from one year to the next, it failed. And then having a hard think and then kind of forcing myself to scale down and accepting those limitations is what's really pushed me to expand on the ideas of interplanting.
As Curtis admits, it took him years to figure out the system, but that's advanced farming. Want to try interplanting? Here's a way to get started without overwhelming yourself. In year 1, we're going to keep it simple. You'll plant radishes in between rows of brassicas like kale or broccoli. The key to this is you want to plant the radishes when you transplant the brassica. Broccoli goes in, seed the radishes right next to it. 20 to 35 days later, you'll be able to harvest the radishes. Those are out of the bed, leaving room for that brassica plant to fully mature.
It's always just gravitating to the higher yield in every respect. It's just going for the biggest leverage point on what can I do to get the most done now.
Once we've mastered year 1, we can go to year 2, which is relay planting. Remember I talked about that a little bit earlier? Here's what we're going to do there. When you plant your tomatoes, you're going to let those get established. Once they are, you're going to plant some side crops next to it. Things like basil. They make a nice combination with tomatoes on the table, but also in the garden. Then you can harvest that basil while you harvest the tomatoes. If you want to take this to the next level and get really advanced, and my tomatoes are going to be coming out in a month. What you can do is plant another crop, a fall crop, below those tomato plants. When you harvest out the tomatoes at the end of their season, the fall plants have already had 30 days in that bed and are starting to mature, and they can take over that same space. This is the beauty of relay intercropping. You're not dealing with any downtime. There's always something in the bed that you can harvest, or at least it's maturing. Here's the brutal truth. Interplanting, it sounds amazing, but it isn't a magic bullet. There's definitely some issues. It's a tool that's going to require exceptional planning skills. You have to know when something's going in the ground and when something's coming out. If a seedling is going in the ground, you have to know when to start that seedling so it's ready to go in the ground at the exact time that it needs to. This isn't something that you can do with just a wing it approach. If you're not a planner, don't take on interplanting because it is time complex in terms of knowing what to do when. You're going to need to be physically flexible and careful. You're going to have a lot of crops in one space, which means you need to be paying attention. You need to be maneuvering around everything. You need to be careful when you're planting and harvesting that you don't disrupt this succession that you planned and worked so hard to create by just doing something stupid or careless, like stepping on that crop. You also have to have a deep knowledge of crop timing. You have to understand the nuances of all the crops in your system, how long they take to mature, how big they are at different points in their growth. Without this knowledge, you can run into errors where you have two plants competing in the same space, and that's not what interplanting is. You're trying to create a harmonious relationship, not a contentious one. And I'll tell you this right now, if you're not prepared to fail, don't try this. You're going to make mistakes, but that's the good thing is you learn from those mistakes. So be willing to fail, learn, and adapt if you take on interplanting.
It's incredible how much the systems make your farm more profitable and less work.
Interplanting is a fundamental shift in how we think about crop production. Instead of the line of thinking, one bed, one crop, it's now one bed, continuous production.
There was never a time in the timeline of those greenhouses that there wasn't production coming out of them. And that's the real brilliance with interplanting.
Start small, track everything, learn, and remember that farmers that you hear about or see on Instagram doing this took years and years to perfect their system and had a lot of failures along the way. If you want to learn more about Curtis's interplanting system, be sure to check out season 1, episode 17 of The Urban Farmer. I'll link to that below. Let me know your thoughts on this whole topic, if it's something you do, if you like it, how successful you are. Thanks for watching. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.